Well, Congressman, thanks for the time. The Upper Peninsula, Northern Michigan, Southern Michigan, we all had something in common and still do, frankly. It's poor air quality from Canadian wildfires. You spoke with the ambassador a few days ago. What did he tell you?
Well, I have a great affinity for Northern Michigan. My wife's family has a place over just a little bit west of Traverse, and my family have been tax-paying landowners in UP. We've had a camp up in Blaney Park for over 30 years. I have a very deep, frankly, affinity for Northern Michigan, and no place was hit harder in the world than Northern Michigan over the past week because of the wildfire smoke. My wife and children were up in the UP, and they couldn't even see the pictured rocks from the boat because of the smoke. And my son's asthma flared up, and I know that there are so many people who have the same story. Michigan had the worst air quality in the world, and it's unacceptable. I relayed this information to the U.S. ambassador to Canada and also the Canadian ambassador to the United States. This is in addition to the letters that I've written to the Prime Minister of Canada and officials up there over the past few years. This isn't new, and part of the big deal is the fact that Canadian officials have known about this. They've known about the health and economic issues that they've caused in the United States and in Michigan, and they've done precious little about it other than scoff and mock our concerns. Well, that day is over. We are right now, today, we're dropping bills in both the House and the Senate to allow the administration the latitude to sanction individuals who are found to be in a position to do something about this and doing nothing. And also, later on in the week, potentially, tariffs to make Americans whole for the health and economic devastation that the gassing of the American people, of Michiganders, takes a toll. The Canadians are our friends, they are our partners, but they also have responsibilities. And we're going to work with them to make sure that they're able to satisfy those responsibilities in a manner that's mutually beneficial.
I want to dive into a couple of those things further in depth. And you mentioned sending letters. This is not the first time this has happened, as you pointed out, and it's also not the first letter that has been sent. You know, a couple of quotes, you kind of even alluded to them. Our patience has worn out. We're done accepting apologies in place of action. If any, what promises have been made in years past that have not been delivered on in terms of, you know, monitoring and keeping these wildfires at bay from the Canadians?
Well, really, it's really hard to hug a friend when they have their elbows up, so to speak. Our concerns for years have been met with derision, mocking, almost like they're scoring political points by thumbing their noses at the Americans. That's unacceptable. We are not interested in their excuses anymore. It's been a number of years, and they need to come to the table with real solutions. And the real solutions we're looking for is let's work more closely together to combat these things. When we ask directly and they say, oh, we have all the help we need. Well, obviously not, because we have seniors and young people who are choking. And during these situations, I have a heart doctor friend who said that occurrences of a heart attack and stroke increase in addition to folks who have asthma and COPD who continue to struggle. So what they have been doing is unacceptable, and we need to see more action. So the action specifically, aggressively reduce fuels before fires begin. That means mechanical thinning. That means selective harvesting. That means prescribed. Also means maybe getting back to the practices that have worked for centuries when they used to allow indigenous peoples all over their great nation to handle this stuff themselves. And so for whatever reason recently, they got away from that, which is the reason why we think back to the 80s and 90s, and we never remember things like this when we were growing up. But now they're hiding behind climate change when really it's just poor management and poor leadership. So we are going to continue to work with them. And in addition, we want to be good partners as well because we have our own issues. I don't have to tell folks in northern Michigan, due to ice storms over the past few years, we have a ton of downed timber and tinder around with broken limbs and around northern Michigan. We risk catastrophic forest fire if we don't manage. And so we may need their help one day. By deepening our relationship and making sure that we have mutual respect and support, that is how we're going to make sure that we reduce the health and economic devastation that's caused by wildfires on both sides of our borders. But we need the Canadians to take this and us seriously.
So going directly into a conversation about the bills that are being introduced in both the House and the Senate, what would those sanctions look like in real terms? And you mentioned the possibility of tariffs as well. Is it beyond tariffs, or is it just tariffs?
No, so it gives the Secretary of State to use his latitude to determine if there's anyone who is frankly responsible for doing their part in Canada to manage their own affairs, and if they're not, well, then there will be sanctions to those individuals. Of course, we don't want to do that, but again, when the response for 4 years of American concerns being voiced is mocking of our concerns, our health and economic concerns, they really leave us no choice. And so in addition to that, there's been a lot of health and economic devastation wrought over the past 4 years. Our Canadian partners have a responsibility to their neighbors to make sure that if they continue to not effectively manage the impact of these fires, then the tariffs that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on, it gives the president flexibility to put those tariffs on and then be able to allocate those resources to Americans' health concerns. Otherwise, American taxpayers would be paying for Canadian pollution. It gives American taxpayers and businesses relief for any lost business when economic concerns would be covered from those tariffs. So again, this is just increasing the amount of latitude that the administration has, and we're going through the proper channels by dropping this legislation in both the House and the Senate. Again, we want to work very closely with our Canadian friends and family, but under no circumstances are we satisfied with just sending a strongly worded letter and continue allowing our people to suffer. My job is to protect the people of the state of Michigan, and I don't make any apology for that.
Just kind of talking about those financial penalties that we would attempt to levy on them, but obviously you're well known for your time in the military. My parents were both in the military, and one of the militaryisms, if you will, is trust but verify. How can and would the U.S. make sure that Canada is doing what they need to do in preparation, frankly, for next year to ensure this doesn't happen again next year instead of letting them be reactive instead of proactive?
Well, we're friends. In many cases, we're family. And with family and friends, we all know we have relationships that sometimes need to have a tough conversation. Sometimes, even with your family, you need to let your friends and family know you're serious and to take your concerns seriously. This is just one of those things. The way that we can do this is to actually work more closely together to make sure that we have mutual benefit, that we're supporting each other. Up until very recently, like a few days ago, the response we've gotten from the Canadian leadership, again, was mocking our health and economic concerns and then saying that they had everything under control, where they obviously don't, when we have worse air quality than some of the worst places in India and Africa. I landed a few days ago, and it smelled like I just landed in Iraq when I landed back in Romulus in Detroit Metro Airport. That's unacceptable. So again, we are looking forward to working very closely with our Canadian partners, but strongly worded letters have proven that they do not work. So we're going to take the next step, and we're going to hopefully motivate them to work more closely with us to manage their affairs more appropriately, have a more closely mutually beneficial arrangement, abide by some of our terms, and then hopefully have an agreement that works so that we're operating in each other's mutual benefit rather than scoring cheap political points on either side of the border.
We are speaking with Congressman John James. Congressman, I really appreciate the time that you've carved out for us today. Thank you so much.
Yes, anytime. God bless. Bye-bye.